Okay, well, let me go ahead and kick it off, Arthur. I'll turn it over to you in a second. I want to welcome everybody to this month's SIKM Leaders Community Call, being held at a special day and time because of our presenter being located in Australia. In the past, Arthur has been generous enough to come out in the middle of the night to accommodate our normal time, but this time I thought I would offer him a more convenient time. So glad that you're joining us today, which is Monday in the US and Tuesday in Australia. We've had Arthur on present numerous times before. He's been an active member of our community for many years, and we're certainly glad to have him back again talking about a topic that he's written a recent book about, Becoming Adaptable. Arthur, thanks so much, and I'll turn it over to you.
My great pleasure, Stan. It's lovely to be back. I often talk about SIKM as the community for knowledge management around the world. And I've learned a lot from you guys, so it's good to give a little back as well. So Becoming Adaptable, we'll try and make this a little bit interactive. I know people are used to listening, but please feel free to interrupt, ask a question, challenge. I talk about creative friction where, we constructively exchange differences of points of view. People have differences, points of view. It shouldn't lead to a conflict. It should lead to a learning opportunity for both sides. I learn something about what you learn, what you think, and vice versa. But as this little infographic says, you don't need a crystal ball to know your world will get turned upside down at times. And in particular, right now, the world is being turned upside down a lot. Things like, the COVID pandemic, climate change, different perspectives about whether climate change exists or doesn't exist. They all make for a good conversation. Change stresses people. People are going, oh, I'm unfamiliar with that. I'm worried about it. I don't know what's going to happen. And from a knowledge management perspective, I don't have the knowledge to deal with this situation. I don't know how to make a decision or how to act in this circumstance because I don't know. So what knowledge management helps us to do is to understand how to make sense of the world, how to understand what's likely to happen next. But actually, the world is changing so quickly for whatever reason, we don't always know what's going to happen next. This is why people talk about VUCA, right? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. How do you make decisions when you don't know? Well, you be adaptable. You have more tools in your toolkit to be able to make decisions. And this is what this is about. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have 4 conversations. I call these a collaborative conversation spiral. So one conversation leads to another, which leads to another. So you can see this little piece of DNA. This is my way in Becoming Adaptable. I describe you've got to get conversation into your DNA. It's got to be a natural way for you to interact with others. But what does a conversation spiral look like? There's kind of 8 steps. I get annoyed a bit that, we always feel we have to oversimplify the world. The world is complex. You can't just say, A equals B plus C, because there's all sorts of, combinations that happen. But to help people who are less familiar, if you give them a basic process to start with, take these 8 steps, do this multiple times. After a while, they won't be thinking about the 8 steps. They'll be doing these things as a natural way of dealing with it. That's why I call it, I use the DNA metaphor. Just build it into the way that you are, the way that you interact with the world. So the 8 steps to give you a really constructive, productive conversation is acknowledge your differences. Did somebody have a question there? No? It's all right. Somebody. Okay. Firstly, acknowledge those differences. I'm coming into spring. You guys mostly are coming into winter. The world is different for us, even though that we're in the same time. Where we've got different experiences of that time. So acknowledges what differences that you got. You see on SIKM Leaders, a whole bunch of different models and discussions about how we perceive knowledge, how mature something is. What do those maturity models look like? People are having a great conversation about that, coming in with a whole range of different perspectives of what it will look like. You can hear me all right, Stan?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. Just checking. So the once you've acknowledged the differences, then you respect others' perspectives. Say, oh, that's interesting, Stan. I understand where you're coming from. That wouldn't work for us here in Australia because I'm not saying, Stan, you're an idiot. That's wrong. I'm saying, oh, okay, well, that's different. Now maybe we can explore that a bit. So as we respect each other's differences, we can then start to converse and inquire about those. So as we talk about it, you ask questions, you explore that. And sometimes that conversation and inquiry will come out as, oh, wow, Stan, now I understand why you're doing it that way. And although we don't do it like that in Australia, maybe we could. That's a really good idea that we're not applying here. And through those inquiries, it highlights where we can adapt. And this is where the significant thing around becoming adaptable really hits home. It gives you that new idea, that new perspective, a new way, an insight. You say, you know what, I can take that on board and do something with it to build my own capability. And as we adapt and expand our capabilities, increase the scope of things that we are knowledgeable about and can do, we then become more capable. And it's through this becoming more capable through adaptation that we get increased knowledge flow, increased ability to make decisions that we couldn't make before. And that's where we reduce the stress. So you often hear people who are in a difficult situation, they go, oh, I just had no choice. Or I really just couldn't do that. I was forced. There are always other, not solutions, but possibilities, other options. The more options you have available in your toolkit, the less stressed you are. Maybe you're a little bit more confused because you don't know which way to go, but at least you have the ability to choose. Consciously choosing where to go next enables you to engage better in collaboration, and that collaboration enables you to create social value. So that's a spiral. Now, you don't have to go, right, we're in step one now, let's move to step two, let's move to step three. But as you start to learn this, it's good to practice to say, have I done this? Have I done that? Have I done that? And as you get used to it, you'll find that you quickly go through conversations, you go through the 8 steps. And the remarkable thing about this is, once you've been through the cycle of 8 and you've co-created something new, it then brings a new piece of knowledge, a new flow, an increased connection between you and who you're collaborating and conversing with. It then gives you a new framework or a new point to go and start again. So, oh, now that we've done that, let's come back and acknowledge the differences, etc. And you go, that's why it's a spiral, not a cycle. You go through these 8 steps. It's not a cycle where you come back to where you started. You actually come back to the same activity, but you are at a new point of knowledge, a new level of understanding. So you engage in the next cycle at a higher level than you were before. So instead of just going around the same old circles, like, what's the definition of KM? We've all been through that one so many times. We say, well, we now understand that there are many, many definitions of KM. And as Tom was saying on the forum a couple of hours ago, which ones of those do we apply in different situations? How do we take what we've got there and apply it to a whole range of different industries or applications? So that's a collaborative conversation spiral. I'll show you what that looks like with another visual in a moment. But coming back to what we want to do today, I want to cover these 4 conversations. Why is adaptability important? And then move from there to say, relationships and trust, increase knowledge flow. How does that happen? Well, I've talked a little bit about that through the collaborative conversation spiral. Then talking about this whole idea of how do we balance our culture? Being competitive is important. Being collaborative is important. But they seem to be the opposite things. So how do we have a highly collaborative and competitive organization? What does that look like? How do we bring that together? And then at the end, hopefully, we'll still have time. We'll do some personal reflection and setting a self-challenge for you to take this forward and apply it in some way as you do that. So before I move into the first conversation, are there any questions or differences of opinion about what we're going to do today in the collaborative conversation spiral? No? Okay. Good to see you online, Arno. I haven't seen you in many years. It would be nice to catch up. Not since I did the KM Washington, D.C. thing. Geez, that must be nearly 10 years ago now. Anyway, it's nice to have you on board. Okay. This is a visual that I wrote many years ago, probably getting on, was published
Arthur?
in 2000. Yeah.
There was a question that Connie just typed in, if you want to.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thanks for picking that up. I see there was one more there. So, okay, thanks, Connie. Do you want to speak to that as well? You may be muted, Connie. I can't see whether you're... oh, okay, you can't. All right. Thank you. It took many it took many cycles to build that, and as a scientist, I started my life as a biological scientist. You know, I like the DNA. You know, as the code for life. You know, and I've often brought the DNA type thing into what I do in management. How do we, you know, embed this in our behaviours? Things like the organisational zoo and you know, getting people to understand complex things through visuals, which Dan and I spoke about. But yeah. Well, maybe we can, you know, drop me an email and we can talk about that. But it started as a cycle, but then I realized, well, yeah, but that just brings you back to where you started, and that's no good. So anyway, just one more thing on conversations that matter, and this is out there on blogs and things, and but when we're having these conversations, we should keep in mind we're trying to do 5 things. You know, what is this conversation about? Why are we talking here today? What are we trying to achieve? And it's important to focus on that purpose of the conversation, because this could be just a sharing conversation. It could be an argument. It could be me doing a pitch to Stan for, you know, for a product or service. It could be a selling cycle. So what are we trying to achieve? Are we aligned in what we're trying to achieve in the conversation? And if you're not aligned, it's not going to work. But if you are aligned, then you say, well, what are the outputs? What are the physical, tangible things that come out of this? So there'll be a recording of this. There will be a, you might make some notes. You might take a photo of a screen. Somebody might do a post on, you know, sort of Facebook or Instagram or, you know, whatever the new places are that people are these days. These are the physical, shareable things that come out of the conversation. On the other side, there are the outcomes. You may generate a lot of outputs, but you're angry. Arthur said things that I didn't agree with, or you may be excited, as Connie was. Oh, I really like that visual. You know, so the outcomes are the intangible things. It's how we feel, the relationships, the learning that we get from the conversation. They're not measurable, but in my opinion, they're more important than the outputs. Of course, to the people we serve as knowledge managers, the outputs are more important. We need to justify our existence. We need to, you know, show what tangible benefits that we're going to get from the project or the KM initiative that we're putting up. And on the other side, well, what are those benefits? Is it money? Is it, you know, saving lives? What are the benefits? And who are the beneficiaries? That is, who receives those benefits? It may not be the people in the conversation. So if we're having a conversation about raising money for, some charitable cause, the beneficiaries will be the people that get the money that we raise. So they're the things to think about in a conversation. What are we trying to achieve? How do we get benefits out of it? Who gets them, etc. So let's go on to the first topic. Why is becoming adaptable improving your performance, improving your success? During COVID, there was a great example of a gin distillery. And this was documented online. The link is there. The link to both of these stories is there. These are just two examples of showing how good adaptability swiftly increases your business continuity. This Toronto distillery, they were doing great business selling gin into high-end nightclubs. And of course, in COVID, there were no nightclubs and they had no route to market, no direct route to market to general sales. So, but they thought about, well, okay, how do we become adaptable? What's our strengths? Where are our capabilities? We make alcohol and put it into bottles. Now, well, there's no need for that right now. And we don't have a route to market. So where is a need for what we do? What shifted COVID shifted our context. What's the need now? Well, they say, well, we can actually put alcohol-based sanitizer into bottles. And there's a huge need for that because all of the hospitals can't get supply of sanitizer. So they switched to bottling gin, to using their distillery to make and bottle sanitizer. And then as a promotion for that, they actually gave away the first batches for free into the hospital industry. And they got huge coverage for that. And they then continued on. And they've probably gone back to making gin now because things have changed again. But they survived, and not only survived, but became very profitable by selling their sanitizer right across Canada and beyond into the US. Then they're learning from that, this idea of what have we now learned? Let's move forward. What does that mean? They then went on to doing other things. I haven't gone and checked up on them again since, but I will see whether they now have an expanded product range, whether they've gone back to what they were doing before, or whether they've given up the gin and then sort of expanded into the health industry. Don't know. But their adaptability was remarkable. And they marketed it very well, and that accelerated their success. Another example happened here at home in Melbourne. Restaurants were all closed. You were not allowed to seat people in your restaurant because of COVID. As you probably know, Melbourne was the most lockdown city in the world. We had 7 or 8 lockdowns. It was months and months and months and months cumulatively over a period of about 18 months. We're through that now. We're not going back into lockdown, we believe, although with the latest wave, who knows? But what happened is restaurants were all going broke. They were allowed to serve takeaway, but they needed touchless purchasing. But what one restaurant did is they actually created a fine dining experience in your car. No one was parked in the city because no one could go to work. So they had all of these free car parks right in front of their restaurant. They could order on the phone on an app. You'd order what you wanted. You come up, you park your car. They'd bring out a nice little car-side table and give you that eating out experience while you're sat in your car. So, great adaptability. So again, what are our strengths and capabilities? What do we need to do? Where's the market sitting? How do we produce a product or service that provides? Then you deliver that and you learn from it. So these are kind of examples of adaptability under extreme circumstances. But there's probably hundreds of these that satisfy you in your own environment. Questions or comments about that? No? Okay. I see there's a few more comments on the chat. Thanks, John. All right. So yes, stories. Very good. Okay. Stories are really powerful and they work very well. In fact, several years ago, I wrote a chapter of an art book on stories. We can share documents on SIKM Leaders? Can't we, Stan? I'll post it, or I'll send it to you, and you can put it up on the use of stories, real stories from KM on improving business performance. So I'll make a note and do that. Okay.
Yeah, Arthur, you can attach it to a post. You can do it yourself.
Yeah. I figured that that was probably the case. I just couldn't remember. Okay. All right. So moving on. This is a visual that I drew, and we go, oh my God, look at that! It's too busy. I can't deal with it. But the idea is with visuals is to reflect the complexity of what's going on, but then to highlight key points in that visual, and you don't try to explain the whole visual. You do it as a conversation starter. You put it up there and say, so what do you get out of this? And someone might pick up and, I think the relationships are really important. Or, Connie might say, well, there's that, conversation spiral that I really liked. And I like the way that connects into, a community coming together around a challenge. So you can use these visuals to create conversations, to get people to share what they think of something. And through that, all sorts of insights that you wouldn't have thought yourself come to the fray. Oh, yeah. Actually, I didn't see that there. It's a bit like, interpreting an artist's painting. People sit there and they stare. I get this and I get that. And the artist is going, really? I didn't paint that. The visuals are really powerful for that. I'm not going to talk about this. It actually came out of a conversation through the KMGN, the Knowledge Management Global Network. And we were facilitating an online activity during COVID, and people were sharing all sorts of ideas in a Google Doc. And I just brought it together in a picture and popped it back up and said, that's what we talked about. And that worked really nicely. So this is just an example of an output from a conversation that then can create new conversations going forward to share perspectives. So, and it's through that someone will bring a perspective that you hadn't thought of, and that perspective then enables you to say, oh, wow, I could use that. Yeah. So that's how it triggers the adaptability. So I'm just going to open up the chat for a second. And I just want you to put an A, B, C, or D in the chat. So how do we feel about the future? How comfortable are you? Like, I really worry, the uncertainty, this whole, Ukrainian war and COVID coming back. And, I'm really, really worried about the future of the world. Or where are you on this scale? Or are you down at E? I'm really excited, change is so disruptive. It creates all sorts of opportunities. I'm the entrepreneur, the definition of an entrepreneur that I really like is somebody who jumps off a cliff and builds some wings on the way down. Now, I think, that's a bit too far gone for me, but you can see some people, when they see this disruption, they just see opportunity, and others just see problems. So pop into the chat, and I think you see the chat when I share it on the screen like that, right? Yep. So let's see, we've got E's, B's, D's. So B, C, E, D, D, B, E, no A's, no one that's like really, really worried. There's some people that are confident, I think one or two excited. So but you can see just in this small group, we're actually really spread about a level of comfort, about disruption and change. No one's, really paranoid or, deeply stressed. But even in a small group, there is quite a spread of how we feel about the world based on what we know. Of course, what each of us know of the world is different. It depends, what TV channel you watch, whether you think climate change exists or it doesn't, whether you think, vaccines are, the government trying to control us, or vaccines are the savior of the world. We all have a different point of view. And the reason for asking this question is to show that there is always a diversity on any question that you ask. And that's why you ask questions rather than tell people how the world is. Because the way I see it may not be the way you see it. The way I see it may be completely an outlier to everyone in this conversation. But if you ask the questions and inquire, that's that adaptability and inquiry around the middle of the collaborative conversation spiral. The more that you inquire and converse around those things, the more knowledge you have access to. Yeah? If you only ever tell people what to do, you only ever know what you know. And what happens very quickly, if you're the type that only ever tells people what to do, people stop sharing with you anyway, and you end up in a controlled hierarchy that's actually uncontrolled as soon as you're not there. So the way that we behave, the way that we interact is extremely important to our ability to adapt. The last thing I've got on why adaptability, this is the World Economic Forum report on changing to a more social perspective. The link is there on the right. You have already, I think, access to the slides. It's a good report. The most important graphic out of it is this one, in my opinion. I mean, you may find a whole bunch of others that are more important, of course. But what they're doing is they're talking about, they're really talking about social capital. You know, how do we build, or I think, well, they refer to it as human capital, but this social capital, how are we changing the way that we operate businesses? What will be the successful businesses in the future? They're the ones that are going to be more on the right, so rather than the left. Actually, funnily enough, it's politically, it's more on the left than the right. They're becoming more social. I was talking about the left of your screen. So we want to shift from a focus of profit. We're not saying don't make profit. That's ridiculous. Of course, businesses need to make profit to invest in the future to get money. But they're saying shift the emphasis from profit to purpose. Why do you exist? And you're seeing this a lot in the millennial startups. You know, it's more a purpose-driven organization and often a not-for-profit in order to achieve some sort of social change. I'm seeing this quite a lot, but despite this, there's still a lot of corporations that are on the left side, profit and policy and standalone and competitive. And then they say, oh, well, we made a lot of profit, so we'll donate some to charity. You know, I like what Semler said, you know, the author of Maverick. He said, if you had to give back, you took too much. How about you balance it up front and take some of your revenue and invest it as you go along? But there's a big shift. If you are not adapting towards that shift, you will probably become less relevant to more and more of the market in time. That's the adaptability point. You need to be thinking about how to adapt. I really like the work around Sharma of ecosystem organizations, and very much SIKM Leaders is an ecosystem, not a hierarchy. And we exchange with each other. We what's the word? We're symbiotes, right? We support each other through our sharing, and we are all better off as a result of that sharing happening through the SIKM dialogue. I've learned a lot from both Stan and the forum over the years. All right, whoops, that went back for some reason. Okay, so questions or comments about the need to become adaptable? Any comments on that before we shift into the second conversation?
Well, Arthur, my feeling is that the inability of people to adapt is a big source of a lot of our conflict in the world, right? The old versus the young, or the various social evolutions that people resist. The strife that we have is largely because it's hard for people to accept change.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And we'll expand on that a little bit in the competition and collaboration piece, which is the next conversation after this one, Stan. But you're right. And in Becoming Adaptable, I talk about that a lot. The idea, if you look at Carol Dweck's work around, sort of mindset, Mindset is important. What is your mindset? You need to make up your mind about things, right? But I talk about, the word mindset is constructed wrong. And actually in Becoming Adaptable, I said we need to change the word from mindset to mindflex. Because set means, concrete is set, something is set when it's done and dusted, and we're not going to revisit that. And if your mind is set on something, then you become very inflexible, and it could be, dogma, propaganda, experiences, a whole range of reasons why you are where you are. But once your mind is closed, it's very hard to come out of that. And a lot of our education systems do that. They teach us rather than facilitate the learning, which I also talk about. They get us into a belief that there is a truth, and anything other than that truth is therefore an untruth, and so it's dichotomous. But I really believe. I like Carol Dweck's work, around mindset, and she says is growth mindset or fixed. But actually, in Becoming Adaptable, I said it's actually a scale. What we need to do is slowly, there are some things which you are fixed on for good reason, but maybe there's other things you can open your mind to. And I've often defined education as opening your mind, not filling it. So if you just take what we know and stuff it into your head, well, the only thing you can ever know is the way the world is now. But actually, the future is not the same. We know things are changing all the time. So we need to open the mind to new possibilities because things are going to change. But of course, some people say, oh, we're going to talk about comfort zone in the final bit. But, people sort of get of a set mindset, or of a fixed mindset, get very stressed if they have to step outside that comfort zone. So, anyway, I'm cannibalizing some of the stuff I need to say later, but that's okay. That's what conversations are like, right? You can't guide where they're going exactly. Thank you for the comment. Any other comments before we talk about building trusted relationships? No? Okay. So this is again another graphic I did many years ago, and it's got my organizational zoo characters on the left. Each one of those represents a behavior. I'm not really going to talk about that much now, but what I'm saying is a diversity of behaviors aligned to your conversations and connections will build a trusted relationship. So if you can behave in the right way, in the right interactions, what you do is you build trust. Like if I started telling racist jokes right here, that would be extremely inappropriate and off character for me anyway. It would undermine the trust. What that would do, I'd go down the red line here. So in that interaction, you would have some distrust for me. You say, geez, Arthur's very disrespectful. That's inappropriate. I'm not going to share with him. And whatever he's sharing, I'm not interested in anyway. So that undermining of the trust because of the misaligned behavior then leads to a confrontation. Or you just tune out, turn off, leave the call, or step up and say, listen, Arthur, that's really inappropriate, which could then lead to a conflict. What we're really trying to do is we're trying to interact in a way that aligns our behavior with the behavior of the others in the group, that builds trust, and that trust builds sharing. And through that sharing, we collaborate. And this is exactly what Stan has led and facilitated extremely well with SIKM Leaders, in that this virtuous collaboration cycle where people say, oh, geez, that's a good idea. I'd like to add to that. And we keep sharing and expanding what we collectively know. And of course, the more of that we do, the more our performance increases. So that's pretty logical, right? Build trust, trust increases sharing, sharing increases collaboration, collaboration over time enhances performance, providing we listen to each other, right, rather than go into conflict and fight about it. So another way of looking at that, this is a little bit like a precursor to the collaborative conversation spiral. It was created as part of that thinking, but I kept this visual because it's a simple way of starting a good conversation. So what we're trying to do is to get our participants to listen and share in cycles, and the kinds of behaviors. This is kind of, a collaborative bee, a knowledge sharing, cross-pollinating insect, and the naive kid, where we're just throwing ideas in, to see where they go. That then leads to another conversation, which is opening the mindsets, the contribution. When we're in conversations, people say, oh, why would I join SIKM Leaders? What would I get out of that? Okay, that's the wrong question. Why don't you go contribute something and see what happens? You inquire, you ask, you contribute, you give in order to see what you get back. I mean, who goes off and expects someone to give them something for nothing? It's crazy, but that's the way people are dealing with online communities. It's not how SIKM Leaders work. That's why they've been successful for so long, because people are contributors and they are enabling collaborative conversation spirals. Yeah. So you're giving that. And of course, the more you contribute and open your mind and learn with each other in collaboration, the more it builds the trust. And that enables us to lead each other, and it gives us positive collaborative outcomes. This isn't 3 cycles of adaptability. Quite often people will join a community and they won't say anything. They'll just listen. Yeah. And I think you've had post Stan of, I think, there's a, 1 in 100 lead, 10 out of 100, that sort of, etc. There's been those conversations over the years, but a lot of people will just listen, and some never advance to then actively contributing. And then some who do take the step then actually change their role and start to lead the conversations themselves. And we see this in the conversations, the Stans, the Tom Shorts, and more recently I see Patrick and Dave Snowden have been contributing in the last few days as well. So that is a graduation of adapting and shifting the roles through your collaboration as your contributions and your confidence increases over time. And we help each other with that by giving positive feedback. Okay, by the way, any of these images can be used. I call them conversation starters. And yesterday I posted on the forum a whole range of images that I use as conversation starters. And these are all free. Please use them. Please go out there and start conversations that you need to start. Pick the one that generates the conversation that you need to have. What are we trying to achieve? Oh, let's talk about leadership and management. Let's talk about adaptability, collaboration. Pick the one, it'll go for 2 to 4 minutes. Call a gathering online or face-to-face, run the video, and then talk about it. Engage with each other and say, well, how can we apply this? It's very powerful. So I'll just give you a moment to read that. We've got 20 minutes left to cover the last 2 conversations. Sorry. Thank you, Connie. Nice insight. There's a few others there I'll come back to. Okay. The truth is, knowledge managers are very good at what they do. Experienced knowledge managers are very good at what they do. They are not good at getting people who are not knowledge managers to understand what we do. And good, the conversation's going. Thanks, Madeline. We're not good at explaining or influencing people outside the knowledge management realm. And this is one of our biggest faults. We're more likely to complain that, the key stakeholder really doesn't understand how to spell KM, let alone understand what it's about. And knowledge managers will talk about, how stupid or dumb others are, that why don't they get it? Unfortunately, it is up to us to get them to get it. And it is a challenge, but this is where we need our influence skills, and we need to adapt rather than preaching to people, what they should do. We need to, highlight the benefits that they will get if they actually implement the principles of KM, etc. So we've got a big job getting people to to understand. I'm not going to talk about behavioral ecosystems too much here, but other than to say you need to be able to look at your environment and to be able to read the culture. And there's various ways of doing that. I describe them in greater length in Becoming Adaptable. But as knowledge managers, one of our biggest skills or capabilities is to be able to read the room. What's going on here? What's the body language? What are the political undertones? Because if you understand those, then you know how to influence. But if you aren't reading the room and you don't realize people are not listening and you just keep, sort of delivering what you know to tell them how to do their business, then it just doesn't work. We've all been there at one stage of our career, I'm sure. But, that whole reading of the room and understanding it. So, to be aware of others' perspectives, you've probably seen this diagram. It's not mine. It's just a picture off the internet. But I thought it's really powerful. I can sit here and argue, blue theory that, that object is a square because from where I stand, it's a square. And of course, Stan's sitting there looking from the other angle, from the yellow, and he's going, hang on a minute, I'm seeing a circle. So how can you call it a square? You're an idiot. Not that Stan would ever say that, to be someone like me that would say that. But I'm a slower learner and I'm adapting, right? I'm becoming adaptable. But, if we share what we both know, what do you see, Stan? Well, I say, well, I actually, let me come over to where you are. Oh yeah, actually, from where you're standing, it is a circle. I understand. So, you need to change the language, the way that we interact. But the real truth is that, the world is far more complex than a single cylinder. There are many, many perspectives, many angles, many experiences, that influence the way, and it's not about right and wrong. In Becoming Adaptable, I adapted these images and I actually put one in there. One of the shadows is a jigsaw puzzle piece. In fact, it might be here. There's a version of it. There's actually a jigsaw puzzle piece, which could never be right. Yeah. So not only do you need to be aware of other perspectives, but sometimes there are perspectives that are just pure propaganda for some other reason that is trying to influence. And you see this a lot in social media. There's the vaxxers and the anti-vaxxers, the climate changes and the anti-climate changes. They will put stuff out there that is deliberately misleading and incorrect. And you've got to be able to differentiate between what is a real possibility and what is actually a deliberate misleading possibility that actually isn't possible. And that's where your critical thinking and your systems thinking come into account. That's why the conversations are so important. Engage in a collaborative conversation spiral around that. So again, these conversations enable us to adapt because we can see the perspectives that we wouldn't have otherwise seen if we hadn't moved around. If I hadn't come around to say, okay, let me stand beside you, Stan, and see what you see. Actually, a really good game that I play, I hold up a laminated picture of a waterfall for my students. I've retired now, so I don't do this anymore. But on the back is just, white. It's blank. But what they see is a waterfall. And I just hold it up and I say, what do you see? And then I say, well, what is this? Tell me what this is. And then I start disagreeing with them. When they, waterfall, it's a rainforest, it's a whatever, it's a picture, it's a laminated piece of paper. If they're a bit creative, they start to sort of, respond to that. They start to see other ways of looking at it. I go, no, you're wrong. That's not what it is. And I just keep saying, it's not what it is. It's not what it is. Until finally someone says, well, what do you see? And I turn it around. I go, that's what I see. So simple little games like that, to open people's minds, to realize that what you're looking at is not what they're looking at, even though they assume it is the same thing. And this is how we can really create new knowledge by putting it out there as, a little bit gamified, a little bit of fun, use of visuals, etc., to really stimulate that shared perspectives. Okay. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things in the chat there. Thank you, Connie. Some good sharing. I'll collect all of these up, and thanks for that feedback. I won't go into that now, unless there's someone who really wants to pick up on that. What I will do is I'll try, or when I do the recording, I'll gather up all of the text as well, and I'll if there's some things in there, I might do a little sharing on SIKM Leaders, questions asked and answers to them, and pop it up there, if that's okay. Still looking forward to more interruptions. Otherwise, I'll keep moving, right? I can just keep talking all day, and I've got to stop in 14 minutes. So, all right. So we'll keep going.
It appears that you've started a conversation going, Arthur. So
Excellent.
Kudos to you for that.
Absolutely. It's great that the conversations are going on in the chat, and I'm sorry I can't be dealing with all of them as I go. But Stan, if you see something really interesting, by all means, grab it and throw it in. And anyone who's writing it can speak too. That's quite okay. Competition and collaboration. We started on this in response to Stan's question earlier. Some people are not necessarily just from a competitive point of view. They just find it very hard to change. They find it hard to step into that next level. And there was an amazing dichotomy of responses in Australia at the beginning of COVID. As you probably know, we had these enormous firestorms going on in Australia. There was a huge percentage, a significant part of Australia was burning all at the same time. All states had fires going on at the same time. We had a very hot summer, and what happened? The response to that was an amazing collaboration. People come from everywhere. They brought money, they brought stuff, and we've seen responses like this in the US in crisis, like Katrina, etc. In time as well, where people really work together very well to help each other out. And then not long after, COVID come along, and people are literally fighting over toilet paper in the supermarket. You go, what is going on here? And the truth is, what's going on is the level of knowledge. In COVID, it was completely new. People didn't know what was going to happen. They were afraid. There was no vaccine at this point in time. They didn't know whether they were going to, be able to feed their children, let alone go to the toilet and need toilet paper, and so people were in their minds fighting for their lives, quite literally. Whereas in the bushfires, it was fellow countrymen. I'm not in danger. There's no risk to me. I know that I'm okay. I'm sitting here in Melbourne, and we're not going to be burnt out. But there are people of my nation that are at threat. So I want to give to help. So this perception of personal risk is really important, and we respond very differently. There was a little noise in the background. I wasn't sure whether it was a question or someone walking through.
Sorry.
No, that's all right, Ibrahim. It's great with the kids or the cat or the dog or the partner or whatever engages. It's good. One of the things I enjoy most when we're doing virtuals is some little kid comes over and says, "Mom or Dad, what you doing?" I always say hello. I can only see one screen at a time at the moment because I'm screen sharing, so I never quite know where it's happening. Anyway, it's most welcome. Don't worry about it. All right. So a little bit more. No, it's fine. A little bit more on competition and collaboration. I wrote a LinkedIn post, I don't know, a year or two ago, that said we need both. It's a bit like, is it this or is it that? I've written posts on, it's not it's management and leadership. It's competition and collaboration. It's efficiency and effectiveness. It's not, one or the other. We see these as one compromises the other, but actually it doesn't have to be that way. If you are having the right conversations inside your organization, you're building that collaboration, it actually gives you greater capabilities and strength to compete with your competitors. So, but even who your competitors are, you've got to be aware of where the competition is. When I worked in the chocolate industry, we had to think of competitors much more broadly, because a big part of, the market is kids spending their pocket money. But kids could spend their pocket money not just on other companies' chocolates, but on things like potato chips or these days it's mobile phones. their money, their available revenue for a child who wants a mobile phone, they'll forego the chocolate for the mobile phone. So, how you even define your competition is got to be open-minded. And are some of your competitors potential strategic partners? And we're seeing this happen more now. One organization's real strength in this, another organization's real strength in that, but combined, they're kind of competing at the edges of their market. But if they combined and got into a strategic partnership, they're extremely powerful. And some of the trade associations do this. Let's try and trade, within America, or, we've got a trade partnership with Australia. We're going to try and reduce what we're buying from China. All of these types of things, these strategic partnerships are very important. And that's all knowledge-based, right? What do you know? What do I know? What are we capable of? And when I define capabilities in knowledge succession, I talk about knowing, doing, and being. Your capabilities need to be across all three. It's not just knowing stuff that's important. You've got to be able to do something with it, apply it, and how you do that, how you engage with your stakeholders. That's the being part. Who do you associate with? Who do you collaborate with? Who do you compete with? All of these behavioral decisions and behavioral capabilities that you apply to what you know and what you do gives you a total realm of capability. Anyway, that's not what I came to talk to you about today, although it's related. When you are becoming adaptable, you don't just want more knowledge. You don't just want more skill. You don't just want more behavioral capabilities and relationships and partnerships. You need to balance it across all three. Going back to conversations that matter, what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to be more successful. We're trying to improve our performance. Increasing collaboration and increasing our competitiveness helps to do that. But we need to adapt to what we do across knowing, doing, and being. So that's bringing all of these things together. There's only a few minutes left. Behavioral DNA, I talk about a lot. This is a way of visualizing what your culture looks like. I won't go into that now, but it uses the organizational zoo cards and gets people to say what kind of behaviors they see, which ones they expect to see, which ones would be expected and tolerated, etc. And you get the opinion of everyone, literally everyone in the room, and you can visualize it within about 20 minutes. Really powerful stuff, but no time to do it in detail now. This is what I was talking about before with Stan. There's a much more professional looking version of it in Becoming Adaptable. But if you look at two entities, you and me, culture A, culture B, company A, company B, the marketing team or finance, there's different expectations, desires, tolerated behaviors and tolerated behaviors. But if you overlap that, you can see here this red area on the far left. This red area represents something that entity A expects, but entity B will not tolerate. Typically the red areas, and this one's the reverse of that. B expects this, but A will not tolerate it. So what happens here is a culture clash. So, Stan, what do you mean you expect me to do something at 3 o'clock in the morning? You've got to be joking, right? Normally there's an argument around these differences in expectations. The green areas represent how we have a sense of identity. You expect it, I expect it. You desire it, I expect it. You say, oh yeah, I love the SIKM forum because it does the things that I like. They're the things that fall into the green areas. We do sharing, we do collaboration, we respect each other. I mean, and I would expect that to happen. And the others on the forum expect that to happen. And that's great. Yeah. So this is where the sense of identity and belonging comes. This is where the conflict becomes, but it doesn't have to be that way. If you can engage in creative friction, that is constructive conversations about differences, you use collaborative conversation spirals, you engage and inquire about what these differences are. This is where the creativity comes from. So, Now I understand why you expect that, Stan. I now see where you're coming from. Now, that might mean I still don't think it would work for Australia, but I understand why you do it. That's one possibility. The other is, or one of the others is, that is so great. I didn't understand it, and I really thought you're a bit of an idiot talking about that. But now that I understand it, and I've had the conversation about it, I really get it. So what I will do is this. But the other is, and this is far more common, is we're engaging about these differences. And you then discover what the weaknesses in what your thoughts are because of my argument. And I discover what the weaknesses in my argument is because of what you share. And we're both in a better place. We have both learned from it, and we come out of that in a more productive way. So that's enough about this particular one. I just want to quickly sum up for a couple of minutes about what I think would be helpful for you to do next. Be aware of your comfort zone. You know, and this is the question that Stan was asking earlier about, you know, some people just won't change. This is a set boundary. They have a mindset, not a mind flex. By the way, mind flex I explore in Becoming Adaptable as well. And I give you a visual of what a mind flex is like and how to facilitate knowledge sharing interactions with mind flex. A different story, no time for it today, but what we're trying to do through conversations like this, through sharing sessions like this, is we're trying to expand our comfort zone. We're trying to get outside into areas that we are less familiar with. Magic happens in your world. You can see that this gray area, there's magic happening in your world. There's some things that are not so magical, but there's a lot of magic out there that can happen if you open your mind to new possibilities. You expand your frame, and the more you step outside your comfort zone, the more adaptable you become, then the more capable you become of continuing to expand that. Just watch out for the red areas. There's some really scary stuff out there, you know, the dark web, deliberate misinformation. There is stuff out there to be aware of, a little bit afraid of, but don't let the fear of that stop you from stepping out. I was going to do this activity. I won't. I'll tell you how to do it in 30 seconds. Basically, share this diagram. So this is the known world. This is the unknown world. Where do you, management type functions are about things that are known. Leadership type activities are around things of how do we move into the unknown? How do we become more capable of creating new things? So, you know, your visions are out here, your tactics are down here. You show them this picture and you ask people to stand up against the wall or whatever, or to share a number. Where do you feel? And ask them a context. Where do you feel on this? Where do you feel on that? And then get to them to exchange points of view. Find someone down here and say, why do you see it that way? Why do you see it that way? Get them to have a conversation around it. Last thing in the last minute, do something about this, please. You know, you've all got my email. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm sharing. This is a really simple, basic way of taking the next step. You know, build a couple of goals that expand your comfort zone a little bit, that get you to engage in something you're less familiar with. Monitor it over time. Where are you at? I'm going to do this and then that, and then that, the 3 phases. And then say, you know, where am I stalled? Who do I need help? Who do I go and ask? And do it with a buddy. The mentor doesn't have to be someone, you know, sort of much older. A mentor, I have mentors, my children are mentors to me with social media, for example. You know, a mentor is just someone more experienced in the thing that you don't know. So Stan, I'm going to hand back to you. I'll unshare the screen. Sorry, it was a bit rushed. I hope that you've got something out of the session today that is helpful. It is now 9 o'clock Australian time.
Thanks a lot, Arthur, and thanks to everybody who was participating in the online chat. It's good that we'll be capturing that and we can continue that discussion online. So we always say that every month, don't we? At the end, I always say, continue the conversation. Sometimes we do, a lot of times we don't, but maybe this would be an opportunity for us to actually do so. So Arthur, we really appreciate you and your creativity in leading a session like this. We appreciate that a lot. And we look forward to the ongoing discussion that we'll have after you post the video of this recording and the discussion thread that's still going on right now. So thanks again. We'll see you again in a month back at our normal time.
My great pleasure. Thank you very much, Stan, and to everyone who turned up today. I look forward to seeing you again. Sorry we couldn't do much in the way of, extra dialogue around, but, the door was open. People were just not quite stepping through it. Increase those comfort zones, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.